Good morning again, and welcome to the fourth hour of the Greg Belfrage Show. It's great to be with you. Really appreciate you guys being here. Let's get right to it. Let's not waste any time because Donald Trump was on Fox and Friends this morning, and it's during the program. So you heard that on Fox News Radio. If you were listening to the radio show today, they were bringing comments that Trump was saying, let's go to the New York Post. The New York Post, Fox News, same company. So the New York Post, they've got this is their top story at the moment. Donald Trump trashing Tim Walz, saying that the Democrat ticket will turn America communist immediately. So let's take a look at this. There's never been a ticket like this, Trump said. This was on Fox and Friends this morning. Never been a ticket like this. This is a ticket that will want this country to go communist immediately, if not sooner, Trump said. So this is after Elon Musk apparently also slammed Harris, calling her quite literally a communist in a post on X. I've not seen that yet. And I'm trying to check X most mornings. So, but I haven't been on X yet this morning. Elsewhere in the interview, Trump took aim at Walz and insisted he was thrilled the Democrats had picked a progressive candidate to complete the presidential ticket. He's a very, very liberal man, Trump said. He's a shocking pick, and I'm thrilled. I could not be more thrilled. That's kind of how I felt about this, too. It's like, that actually, from a Republican point of view, Tim Walz is a great pick. And Trump said, if you look at his record with no walls, no security, let everybody in, he's worse than they are. Nobody knew how radical left she was, but he's a smarter version of her, Trump said. If you want to know the truth, he's probably about the same as Bernie Sanders. He's probably more so than Bernie Sanders. She is more so than Bernie Sanders. That's got to be your guide, Bernie Sanders. And that's not a great guide, Trump said. Yeah. And then, again, this is a story from the New York Post. It's got this piece. And it's the main story at New York Post as of right now. Trump said on a number of issues, whether it's migrants, transgender issues, COVID-19, Black Lives Matter. Trump said he's very heavy into transgender. Anything transgender he thinks is great, and he's not where the country is on anything. This is a shocking pick. I think it's very insulting to Jewish people, talking there about Josh Shapiro not being chosen. More on that in a moment. So it's very insulting to Jewish people, and I think it's very insulting to people who want security. I think it's very insulting to anything having to do with making America great again. So those are among the comments that Donald Trump made this morning on Fox and Friends. And insulting. Yeah, it's insulting on a number of levels. Totally agree with Trump on this. For a number of different reasons you can point to. Yes, very, very, very insulting. All right. So the Washington Examiner's got a piece this morning about Walz and his record on crime coming back to haunt him, says the Washington Examiner. And they report Minnesota saw an alarming crime wave beginning in 2018 that surged through 2021, dipped slightly in 2022, and then dipped again in 2023. And Walz has been in office since 2019. They say, while he did not endorse the defund the police movement, he expressed sympathy for rioters who ravaged Minneapolis, destroying small businesses, burning dozens of buildings to the ground. And again, I mentioned this to you yesterday. I went to Minneapolis some months after the riots. It was a number of months afterward. And Katie and I went to Minneapolis, she actually needed something. There was a piece of electronics that she needed to buy, and so we went up to Minneapolis to get it. Couldn't find it locally, so we went up to Minneapolis to get it. And while we were there, I said, "There's a comic shop that I have frequented a number of times over the years. Actually, a great little place, and I bought some great stuff there. I'll have to show you in another podcast some of the things that I bought there, comic books and some collectibles, and really a neat little place." And so she and I went there. I said, "Okay, while we're up there for what you need, would you mind if we went here?" And she was very accommodating. And so we go, and it's right in this area that was struck then during the riots. And to see the businesses that had been burned, the rubble, it was like, wow. And I'm being very honest with you. When we left afterward, I told her, I never want to come back here again. I mean, I don't ever want to come back here again. And I will spend I mean, it was a great little shop, and I say this with respect to the shop owner. I talked to him for a while, talking about what it was like for them having gone through that, and he wound up actually staying there. He's got a bunk up um, in a not a quite an attic, but it's an upstairs, and he had a bunk up there, but he wanted to stay with the business as the riots were ongoing, and he was telling me what that was like. And I got to tell you, it was like, wow. I mean, I couldn't imagine going through that and how bad it was. And again, he made the decision to protect his business by remaining there, concerned about what was going to happen. That's life in Minnesota under Tim Walz. I mean, and so I appreciate this story then from the Washington Examiner. And they go on to say about Walz, he has signed multiple criminal justice reform bills into law, some that have been pushed by Democrats, one that was bipartisan. When Harris revealed she had chosen Walz, Republicans jumped at the chance to remind the public of the mayhem of 2020. I mentioned that to you yesterday because I was on X yesterday and I searched Tim Walz, and this was like an hour, maybe hour and a half after he had been named, after it was official. And X was already full of pictures of the riot and burning buildings and what Minneapolis looked like. That was all under Tim Walz. That's all under his leadership. And I think it's appropriate to lay that at Walz's feet. Also, JD Vance had a conversation with Newsmax talking about Tim Walz. And JD Vance said that voters will not be fooled by these attempts to paint Walz as a moderate. And that's what the media is doing. He's centrist. He's a centrist. He's a moderate. Oh, yeah. JD Vance said, and I'm a lot, again, Walz was being critical, taking shots at JD Vance. And, you know, if he'll get up the couch and debate me, I'd love to debate him if he'll get up off the couch. And it's like, seriously, Mr. Walz, you would not have a chance in a debate against JD Vance. He will absolutely mop the floor with you. So Vance said, you know, and again, I just compare comments. I look at the comments of JD Vance. I look at the comments of Tim Walz. And I understand right now there's this honeymoon going on in the Democrat Party. And so, you know, they're talking a big game, you know. It's like before the big fight. You know, the boxers come out and they're talking up a big game, and then they get their asses kicked. You know what I mean? Once the fight starts, boom, down they go. You know, it's one of those kinds of things. But lots of big talk ahead of time. That's what we're seeing right now, I think, from from Tim Walz. But I think J.D. Vance will just knock him right down onto the canvas. Anyway, Vance said, and he's right, people are going to look at his record just as they're going to look at Kamala Harris' record. And in fact, he may be even more of a liberal than she is, if that's even humanly possible, he said. This is what he told Newsmax. This is a guy who says that he stands for working people. I know what working people need. They need good jobs. That's not going to happen if you destroy the American energy sector and ship all of our manufacturing jobs off to China. But that's exactly what Tim Walz has tried to do. Vance said Walz has been all in on the open borders agenda of the Democrat Party. Vance said, I know that working people really suffer when illegal aliens bring fentanyl into their communities. I mean, you've heard that on my show. Minnehaha County Sheriff Mike Milstad has been very vocal about what fentanyl is doing in South Dakota, in Minnehaha County, in Sioux Falls. And Vance is aware of it. And so they're also driving down the working class wages. But Tim Walz has been all in on the open borders agenda of the Democrat Party. This is a guy who they're going to say he looks like a moderate. He talks like a moderate. I don't think that's true at all. I agree with J.D. Vance. This guy's not a moderate. The media is saying he's a moderate. He's not he's centrist. He's a centrist. No, he's not a centrist. This guy is far left. He may be even, as Trump said, he may be even farther left than Kamala Harris. Just crazy. So, Josh Shapiro. There's a story at townhall.com. Reports what John Fetterman said about Shapiro reinforced Harris' decision to bypass Shapiro for BP. And so apparently they say Kamala Harris skipped picking Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro due to his religion. The progressive base would have launched a jihad if the rising Democratic star was selected, but there are other reasons, all of them ridiculous. Again, now this is a piece at Town Hall, so it's a little partisan in the writing here. And it goes on to say what Kamala Harris has done is the same thing Hillary Clinton did, picking someone who will never outshine her. And they said, say what you will about Hillary Clinton, but she had a presidential resume. She was a train wreck on policy, but people are pointing out that this is Tim Kaine all over again. Hillary was terrified of being overshadowed, so she picked the most conventional, boring guy she could find. It ended up being a mistake. Kamala has done the same thing, except her guy, Tim Walz, is also extremely left-wing. Yeah, again, there are some who think that Walz may be even more left-wing. And again, you see, as people settle into politics, they may move one way or the other. Sometimes they get into politics, okay, and sometimes they move to the right. Sometimes they move to the left. Walz has moved consistently to the left. And this goes on. Another Democratic operative who spoke with the Post dismissed the notion of anti-Israel sentiment playing a role. This just goes on. Shapiro was passed over 3 days after a video describing him as Harris number 2 leaked online. Senator John Fetterman also reached out to Harris camp, shared his concerns about Josh Shapiro not having anything to do with his faith. Fetterman is one of the most vocal pro-Israel lawmakers on the Hill, certainly among Democrats he is, but concerned about his personal ambitions, according to Politico. So, um, Fetterman's advisors suggested to Harris' team that Fetterman believes Shapiro is excessively focused on his own personal ambitions. So Fetterman was opposed. And again, bottom line is I couldn't be more thrilled about it. I don't know about you. I couldn't be more thrilled about it. And then there was one other story. Let's get hey Brian. Hey, thanks for being here. Brian's on the podcast this morning. Brian's a regular caller to the radio show. Brian said, I used to run an overnight run to the Twin Cities. And during the lockdowns in 2020 and how strict they were with the lockdowns, I had to carry documentation saying I could be out during the lockdown. Yeah, it was. And again, I shared the comments of Governor Kristi Noem about the almost 7,000 Minnesotans who fled Minnesota to come to South Dakota looking for freedom, looking for the ability to travel. Oh, thank you, Sean. Sean's asking people, give the fourth hour a like. Helps get the show on the good side of the YouTube algorithm. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm also running some promos on the air on KELO. I've got some promos that are running pretty extensively outside of my program, inviting people to listen to the podcast at KELO.com, but also to subscribe to YouTube and what we're doing, the Greg Belfrage Show on YouTube. So I'm hoping that'll also push some people. And I will tell you very candidly, I post, I'm streaming the 6 a.m. hour of the radio show as I do it live. And again, my focus during that 6 a.m. hour is not on the camera, it's on the listener and what's going out to our listeners. So I'm concerned about the radio show. So there's not a lot of interaction. I'm not able to, I share some emails as I can, and I interact that way. I interact with listeners via the phones. But the 6 a.m. hour, I'm pretty focused on the radio show. When I do this, I'm focused on you. I mean, I'm focused on what we're doing here. And I'm focused on sharing stories you've not heard yet on the radio show, or this is something new beyond what I told you this morning on the radio show. So I'm trying to make this very much different from what I'm doing on the radio show, whether it's updated. I mean, it's the same in that it's me, and I'm going to have the same reaction on the air tomorrow that you hear from me here today. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to give you a glimpse at stories that I call them the big stories each morning. Start the day with the big stories. That's how we put them as we podcast them. That's what you'll find at KELO.com, the big stories. And again, a lot of that, I'm looking at stories that are trending. I'm also looking at events that are going on. And sometimes I will say the big stories are not the stories that you are going to be hearing on ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN. But I know they're big stories because I think I know you fairly well. And I know that these would be important stories to you. And so those are the things I really try to look for as I'm out each morning and looking at what's going on and what events are, what's happening and what I should share with you. And what I ask myself every morning, what are the things I think you want to know about? What are the things that I think that, you're not, what are things I know you're not going to hear from the legacy media, but they're big news, but the legacy media is not talking about it. I really try to ask myself those questions every morning. And the same thing here for the fourth hour. What are the things the media is not going to be in a rush to tell you? Because right now it's all party time. The Democrats are all celebrating, what's going on with Tim Walz. And again, that's fair. That's their moment. Kamala Harris is the new nominee, and now she's got a running mate, and so there's going to be some level of excitement. Um, the question I have is that going to last? Are now we going to see as kind of time goes on? It's one of the reasons why I shared that ad from Donald Trump this morning. I just thought that was brilliant. Trump, you know, saying, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And that um, using that video of Ronald Reagan, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And going on. Um, I think that's great. And I think if Trump keeps what's going on with my lights here? I'm knocking stuff all over the place. the um my lights are in a precarious position. And so I knocked it right against the wall. That ad that Trump put together, I think is great. And are you better off than you were 4 years ago? I hope that's going to be a strategy that he sticks with. That Trump sticks with that because Trump is Trump, and I like Donald Trump, but I think he gets himself into trouble. The media loves to take a portion of what Trump said and not include it in its entire context. It's one of the reasons, and I've said this on the air many times, it's one of the reasons why I started following Trump myself. Because as I've been doing this job, the media's out there, oh, this Trump said this and this and this. And I'm like, what? So I started to look. Okay, let's go. And I would listen to the clip. And it's like, well, they didn't include this where Trump qualified everything he just said, would it completely change the perspective then that people were having. And the media has been doing that to Trump for years. I mean, that's been the story with Donald Trump. I think since he announced his run for president, that the media has been in the bag to try to, you know, because Trump had been considering would he run as a Democrat and or some third party. And I remember sharing those stories about Trump looking at a third party run, and he was kind of a laughable character at that point. And even when he first initially then became a Republican and he came down the escalator and that whole production, they've been mocking him and not sharing what he has actually said with the American people. So it's no wonder that you've got so many people who have this, they don't really know what Donald Trump is about. They do not know what Donald Trump has been saying. And I think it's one of the reasons why when there's no question that Donald Trump loves being in front of his supporters. He loves being in front of them. And there's something that happens to Donald Trump when he holds a rally. No question about that. But the media just picks very selectively parts of what he has said. And that's been the case for a long time. I learned that seriously. I learned that years ago. During the Trump presidency, I think is when I really understood that. And I'm like, oh, I can't trust any of the legacy media reports on what Trump is supposedly saying. All of it, I started checking them and it turns out they're garbage, absolute garbage. So I think when it comes to Trump, you really are better off just following Trump on True Social. Go to develop a True Social account. And you don't have to post there. I don't. I have an account, and that's how I follow Donald Trump. If I want to know what Trump is saying, I go to True Social and I see it there. And sometimes I think, well, I wish he'd dial that back a little bit. And other times, I think media is not sharing this in context. What else is new? It's a little bit frustrating. David, thank you. David says he listens to the radio show as he wakes up. Try to watch the fourth hour. I find that I agree with you most of the time. Thank you, David. And you know what? I'm trying, and I've said this on the air. I'm not telling anything you don't know. I mean, in terms of my opinion, and so I'm telling what I do every morning is I try to confirm what you're probably already thinking, right? Is that I want to tell you, you know what, David? Hey, you're not crazy. You're not crazy in what you're seeing because I see it too. And then you hear phone calls from people who are saying, yeah, they're seeing the same thing. So David goes on to say, I worry about the USA looking at how many seem to want to end it. Yeah, absolutely right. And then Brian said, what Trump is saying. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? It's a good question to ask. And I really hope the Trump campaign just focuses on that. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And then give them the numbers. Go through it. Walk them through it. Talk about the border. Talk about crime. Talk about those issues. Talk about and in regard to crime, talk about Kamala Harris and her job as a prosecutor. Those kinds of things. And the pain that people are suffering. I think energy has got to be a part of the conversation in the presidential race because what we're seeing with energy prices right now is just absolutely, you know, it's breaking folks' backs. And Brian, for you as a trucker, I know this is something you can absolutely relate to as we talk about fuel costs and then what that does for you and then what it does to the products that you're delivering. Um, it just has an incredible impact on life in America. And I think that's what we've got to be talking about. So keep in mind, again, Democrats are having a bit of a party right now, kind of a heyday for them as their Kamala Harris has been named. Now she's got a running mate. But I'm hoping, do you expect to see change in the weeks that, the months ahead? Are we going to see any change in that? I just don't trust the media. I would love to think that would be the case, but certainly not going to come from the Washington Post. It's not going to, it's not going to come from ABC, CBS, NBC, any of the legacy media. They're not going to be a part of it. I think they'll continue to celebrate for as long as they can. I'm going to leave it there for today, and I want to thank you so much for joining me. Please hit the like button. Makes a big difference. If you've got like-minded friends who might appreciate, and especially the hour that we're doing it, for those who are retired, because they have people who have, and they've honestly said this to me, said, oh man, I sleep in now and I miss your radio show. So I'm glad for the podcast. They go back and they listen to the podcast, but they say, I miss the chance to listen. So for those who are retired or older, I think the fourth hour is, 9:30 every morning. Everybody's up and running by then. Um, it's just a great time to connect with you. And I want to thank you for being here. It means a lot. And I'm going to stick with this for a while. I have promised that I would give this a year. Let's give it a year and see where we're at. And especially with the fourth hour, I'm seeing in my YouTube views more, and I expected this, more that are watching the fourth hour than are watching the live 6 a.m. hour during the radio show. And I think that's the later hour. It's more convenient for people at 9:30 each morning. It's more convenient time. And I also think more folks are up and running versus that 6 a.m. hour. And so I'll continue to, do the 6 a.m. hour on YouTube, but this is really where my focus is going to be, is on the 4th hour. And so what I'll be doing is I've been thinking about this and I'm watching the numbers and kind of trying to come up with a strategy. I will be setting stories aside specifically to share with you during the 4th hour and not touch on them during the radio show. I mean, if it's big news, obviously you're going to hear it on the radio show, but if there are things like jump out but not necessarily to a point where, because on the radio show, I'm also trying to take phone calls. I'm also, in that 7:30 to 8 o'clock hour, I'm also trying to keep it lighter, understanding that you've got some folks with their kids in the car, that kind of thing. And so I lighten it up with Looney Tunes in the news and a look at celebrity birthdays and the KELO history quiz to inject a little bit of fun into the radio show each morning. So I do try to lighten it up, especially between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And then after 8, we take a more serious look at issues going on. But the 4th hour allows us to just get right into some of these harder issues, especially as I post these videos. I post them not suitable for kids. This is not meant to be entertainment for kids. We're talking about serious issues, and I want to bring you serious news. And sometimes news can be unsettling at times. And so I want to be able to do those things on YouTube in the 4th hour. And again, I couldn't do it without all of you. Yeah, Brian responding about the diesel prices. Yeah, absolutely. Diesel prices are going up, which will be a direct reflection in the stores. No question about that. Greg said, hey, Greg, once the new wears off their candidates, hopefully common sense will resume in their party. We'll see. I have hope. Honestly, I try to be optimistic and let optimism shine in your life. If I were to just, you and I talking to each other, be guided by optimism, because there's just too much pessimism in the world right now anyway. And the Democrats right now, everything terrible, and Trump, and it's awful, terrible. I mean, Democrats have been in charge. What's terrible? I mean, things that are terrible right now, whose feet, does that lie at? The Democrats. Donald Trump hasn't been president now for almost 4 years. So give me a break. If you're trying to seek blame, so be guided by optimism. Keep an optimistic spirit. And I've told those of you on the 4th hour this before, as you have an opportunity in your life to make a difference, take it. Take it. When you have opportunities to help other people, take them and do it. And you don't need to tell anybody about it. You don't need to broadcast it. Just do it quietly and know you did something great and you're making a difference in your community and with your family, in your state, and beyond that. Take those opportunities when you get them. And I'll leave it there for today. Thanks so much for letting me join you. Really do appreciate it. Hit that like button. Hit that like button. So long until tomorrow, my friend. Or, you know what I need to say? So long until next time. And may God bless.